Get this started. Before it started up, I'll share my screen. All right, there we go. Okay, and so we're at the bottom of the hour, right? So we're gonna just get started up. Welcome to another weekly edition of Think with a Drink, the weekly webinar series brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. And this week we are doing the 6 blunders of a 401k. And I want to preface this before I start with this, because if you read the email that I had sent out earlier this week, you know, I talk a lot about the coaching that I've done in the past. And one of the things I used to do with all of my teams at the start of season is I would always gather them up and say, look, everybody makes errors, but nobody makes mistakes. And I think the problem is for most people is that we look at mistakes as being those things that keep us from, you know, like having a flow and having a good vibe about things. We put way too much pressure on ourselves. And what happens a lot in that is, especially when it comes to money, is this, I think, Craig, is one of those things that keeps us from having the dialogue, from having the conversation. If we think that we're inadequate or that we've done something wrong, or even worse, something stupid with our money and our finances.
Yeah, I mean, money can be an incredible source of insecurity for most people.
Exactly, yes.
Because it's a very complex, set of parameters when you're dealing with money, between budgeting and credit and, income. It's just a lot of factors to try to juggle.
Right. And so I wanted to start that with this because I did use the word blunder there, and I don't mean it as, hey, it's a blame. It's meant more as the more, euphemistic term in terms of that than anything means, hey, this is a dire consequence, or, those conversations that you have in your own head, like I'm so stupid, or I'm an idiot. Why did I do this? That type of thing. That's not what we're talking about. But I did want to just put that in there so that it's not feeling like this is like, whoa, I did that, why I just made that, mistake. No, everybody makes an error. Nobody makes mistakes. So now that I've had my little soapbox on that, we can get moving forward. So real quick, just so you know, the event's being recorded, but all that's being recorded is what's being shown on the screen. Just ask you to keep your microphones muted. Don't worry about your cameras, your images, or your names. None of that's going to be shown in the recording. There is a chat box, so as we go, just if there's questions, just drop them into the chat box. And I'll introduce my co-pilot in a second. He's here to answer those questions and keep me on pace as we go. And just real quick with that, as far as the presenters, I'm Tom Alessi. I'm the president of the Aries Foundation for Financial Services. I have been in financial industry about 23 years now, actually turned the corner into my 23rd year. I'm an investment advisor. It means that I act in a fiduciary capacity whenever I'm giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I'm going to bring our Vice President, Craig. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I've been in the financial services field a little over 17 years, and I help families and small businesses put together plans so they can have a better future.
Terrific. And like I said, Craig will be chiming in as we go along here. Real quick, the webinar series is brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. You can visit the website. It's www.ariesfoundation.org. And our mission statement is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. We sort of talked about that as far as the open was concerned, those emotional and components that go along with that. And really what we try to help everybody do is sort of get a sense and have a better understanding and handle on dealing with their money and finances. We've got some disclosures. I'm not going to go through them because it takes too long to read the slide. I'm just going to say we're a nonprofit. We're doing this just to try to give education and information, which gets me to the fun part of the evening where I get to say the reason we call it Think with a Drink is because some of this stuff is overwhelming, some of it's daunting, and some of it just like doom and gloom, and who wants to really listen to all of that? So we try to make it a little bit more casual, a little relaxed, and we can't think of a better way to do that than if you have something cold to sip on as we go along. And this evening, I am having one of my favorite beers that only is available in the fall. And I just realized today I better go stock up because they're going to pull it soon from the shelves as fall starts to come to a close. But it is Flannel Friday from our friends at Harpoon Brewery in Boston. Craig, what are you drinking?
Well, my plan was to do woodchuck this week, but I didn't get a chance to get there. So I'm actually having a Diet Coke this evening. So I am doing a non-alcoholic libation.
There you go. And on something to sip on, that's fine. And we'll say scroll.
Oh,
Oh, that's so good. Okay, the agenda. We're going to go through the blunders. We're going to go through explaining the blunders and why it's important, how we can sort of help you with some of that, and taking a look and, you know, seeing if you've done the blunder or, you know, what you can do to get around it. Talk about what's coming up, what's on tap for us. And then if there are any questions, again, you can use the chat box for that. All right, so there are 6 blunders. Now, 6 is not just necessarily that's the cutoff. There's probably more than that, but these are the ones that Craig and I run into most often. We deal with a lot of organizations, we deal with a lot of companies, we deal with a lot of plan participants. And this is generally what we see, 6 to 1, 1 being the worst, 6 being the least, you know, I don't know what offensive, I guess. I don't know what the word is there. I'm like, I got a little lost in that.
the costly.
It's taking too little risk, right? So, you know, Craig and I talk about risk all the time, and the fact that, yes, you've got to be aware of risk, you've got to understand risk, but there is that side that people will suddenly start to be too conservative, right? Craig, the whole idea is if you have money in your retirement account, i.e. your 401k or your IRA, that's not meant to be tapped for 10, 15 years, you should have very little portion of this in cash.
Yes. However, some people do tend to get nervous when they see big market swings, like what happened in 2008, or, you know, a year and a half ago when we had a 30% dip. You know, so that does tend to, even no matter where you are on the chain, can make some people nervous if they're hanging out there by themselves.
Right, but that's where we come into this with, it's a 401k. It's meant to be held for the long term.
Oh, absolutely.
Doing that and moving out and saying, wait, you know, the market's going down. Well, in that situation, the market's going down, but you're writing it down as you're contributing. In a 401k plan, you are participating in that slide. You're buying as the market is on sale. I mean, it really should be buying more at that point, right? It's sort of
counterintuitive. I love it when it goes down. Everything's on sale. Who would want it?
I don't care what store it is. Pick whatever store you love. You know, Best Buy, Target, whatever it is. And if they said, "Hey, everything in the store is 25% off," I think you go and try to find something to buy.
That's why I do my Christmas shopping the week after Christmas. Everything's 50% off.
There you go. See, everything's 50% off. But if I told you, hey, the market's down 25%, everybody runs and hides. No, that's the time to be looking at making the purchases. That's when it's really there. But this is more about that long term, because you've got to be trying to get a return on the investment inside the 401k. Being too conservative, not keeping pace with inflation, for example, or trying to outpace inflation will hurt you in the long run.
I mean, who do you want to work hard, you or your money?
Exactly.
Right. So put the money to work.
Right. That's the whole idea behind it. So that's the first blunder, right? Being too conservative, not taking enough risk. Blunder number 5 is not rebalancing, and we'll talk about what rebalancing is, or sometimes relying too heavily on the target date funds that are available in the lineup selection of a retirement plan. And I'm going to go through each of those, you know, as far as how that works and what it means. But so when we talk about rebalancing, you know, just in front as a basic portfolio, and you can forget that this is listing certain criteria, asset classes here, but just think of it this way. I have 4 funds in my portfolio, in my retirement plan, in the 401k I'm contributing to at work. I selected, my contribution is going to 25% into each of those 4 funds. 25, 25, 25, 25 makes 100, right? There we go. There's the circle, and that fills it up. Mm-hmm. What happens is over time, and whether we're talking 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, something in one of those assets in those 4 funds is going to be doing well. One of them is probably not. And depending on what you picked or what the asset is, it may be doing very poorly. That's a different conversation. We're just talking about your risk now. If you were in, you know, growth mutual funds and bonds, the bonds probably are lagging behind. they're not keeping pace. And so your portfolio that was supposed to be 25, 25, 25, 25 now probably looks like 40, 10 type of thing in that side because of what's happened with the market. And what you have to do is say, I don't care. I'm going to go in and every year on a certain day, rebalance the portfolio, turn everything back to being 25, 25, 25, 25. Sell what's done well, buy what's done bad. Again, this sounds counterintuitive to everybody, but if I said it to you this way, I'm going to sell high and buy low. Gee, that's what everybody wants to do. That's what you're doing when you're rebalancing. You just need to be thinking about what that mix is. That goes back to the risk that we just talked about. These tie together with that, because if you spread yourself too thin, it's tough to keep up, and you don't want to do it too often because then you might miss some of the up push in a market that you're trying to take advantage of. But you can't let it just run forever, because I know what'll happen, right? A downturn will occur, and then you'll lose that upswing that you got. And guess what? Now we're back to 25, 25, 25, 25, but it's only because you had a market correction and you lost all the gain that you had.
Well, because it's usually not the bond portion that outperforms the rest, right? So it's not the least risky investment that usually outperforms the most risky over time.
Right, over time. But if you're looking at it in 1 year slices, it can happen.
Right, but I'm saying if you keep letting these, the riskiest part of your portfolio keep growing, where it seems like it's great because it's growing.
Oh yeah.
But now you're outside your risk tolerance.
Right, you push yourself into a different model. You push yourself out of balance, and like I said, suddenly if your mix was truly like a 50-50 split, I got 50% in equities and 50% in fixed or bonds, and now my mix is 80-20. Right? Because the equity market spiked up so much, the bond market has done so poorly. Well, when the correction happens, guess what? You're going to go back to 50-50, but it's only because you're going to lose all of the money that was in the equity. Whereas if you had rebalanced it, you'd be taking some of those swings out of your portfolio. Again, it's all based on your risk tolerance and what you're trying to achieve.
So don't let it be like a hedge, right? Don't let it overgrow and just crowd everything.
Don't just, you got to trim it back. Very good analogy. Yes. So I mentioned the target dates. Craig and I are big believers in target dates, especially for somebody who's unsure about participating, unsure about getting in, because it's a great way to get in, set it, forget it, let it run. One of the things that you have to sort of caution yourself with is target dates are overly aggressive by nature. They work off a premise of a glide path. So the glide path says, in my early years, I'm going to have a major equity exposure, probably 75 or 80% equities to cash and bonds. And then as I approach the retirement year, whatever that retirement year is, I'm going to start to level down. But at retirement year, age 65 is usually somewhere in that target range. I'm now going to be at like a 50-50 mix. And then it's going to take another 10, depending on the company. We won't mention the big gorilla sitting in our backyard. It takes them 15 years to get out, as far as to get down to a really conservative, like 30-70 mix on the portfolio. So just be aware that some of those target dates can bring more risk than you might necessarily want. Great to get in, but as far as keeping your overall mix, not necessarily the greatest thing to do unless you're adding other pieces to your portfolio.
Well, the other thing too with the target is it's cookie cutter for individuals. Let's say you are going towards 65, so you're 60 years old, you're gliding down, but you decide, look, I'm going to work till 70, 74, right? And you've got other assets, so you don't necessarily need to tap the 401k first. Maybe you don't want to be as conservative with the glide path at that point. So it can go both ways. It's just a matter of
and that's the mindset of I've got to take a look at it. It's sort of the same idea and goes hand in hand. That's why I put it in with the rebalancing thing, because that would be the assessment. I'd be looking at my risk, Greg, and I'd want to rebalance this. And maybe I don't want to be in the, whatever it is, the 2025 target date fund. Maybe I want to be in the 2030 or the 2035 fund.
They're great for somebody who's just getting in, who has no clue and where should I stick it. It's hard to make a mistake.
Like I said, Craig and I are big believers in set it and forget it, get in, but then review it once you start building up assets in it and what you want to do. Blunder number 4, mishandling old plans. So this is probably, this should be up there, but the rest of them are actually even worse in terms of dealing with this. And when we say mishandling old plans, one of the things that happens a lot, especially to younger generation, I don't know what they are now, Gen X, millennials, Gen Y, whatever they are now, people in their 20s generally cash out of plans. And the number is something like, it's over 20% of the distributions that occur out of 401ks are cash outs.
Mm-hmm.
And cash outs are crazy. Cash outs, first off, you're under 59.5, it's a 10% federal penalty on top of ordinary income tax. Here in the state of Massachusetts, you're probably looking at losing close to 30% for a young person of their account balance to taxes and the penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unless you absolutely have to have it, gotta need it, I gotta get it, okay. But a lot of times it's, let's face it, what are they buying? They're buying flat screen TVs a day after Christmas because they're 50% off. I can get this flat screen TV now, see? That's what happens. So a lot of times they get left, right? They get left behind. They don't get looked at, and it causes some problems with some of the allocation strategies that's in there. But that early withdrawal penalty, that's what I was talking about, that it's you can lose. That's same for somebody who's probably in a higher tax bracket, but for a younger person, they're probably in a marginal, 15 to 17% tax bracket along here in the state of Massachusetts. Somewhere in that range, probably could get close to 20%, and then you're looking at an additional 10% on the Fed penalty. But one of the things, go ahead.
I'll say, I think what happens a lot, Tom, especially with the younger generation, is, jobs are more transient than they were before. People aren't staying at a company for 8, 12, 10, 12 years or better. They're moving every 2 or 3 years. So I think that's why they have a lot of small, straggling 401k or 403b, depending on their industry, accounts left behind that they don't know, well, what do I do with this?
Right. Yeah.
I have no
So
idea.
we always make the recommendation. There's 2 things you can do. One is you possibly can roll it to your new employer's plan, right?
Mhm.
Consolidate it with your current allocation into the new plan. Sometimes you have to go through I've got to work for certain hours, certain time frame before I can get into the plan, and then they'll let me do that. Or what Craig and I more recommend everybody is to move it to an IRA. Because the IRA becomes that portable bucket that goes with you. And let's face it, as Craig said, we're a much more transient workforce in today's world. More than likely, you're not going to spend the rest of your working life at the company you're at. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to wind up with another old plan. And if you have an IRA bucket that you can roll it to, now you've got this portable plan that's going to come with you. And if you ever wind up in the situation, if you aren't able to contribute, or can't get into the employer's plan for a period of time, the IRA gives you some place that you can actually make that pre-tax contribution to a retirement account.
Now, one place where you wouldn't want to do that, I learned recently, Tom, is if you have money in a 401k plan and you want to move it into an IRA, if you have significant debt that maybe, you're getting chased on, you can't they can't go after your money in a 401k. But they can go after it in an IRA.
Yeah.
So just something to take into consideration before you go making that jump.
Yeah, because the 401k is in a protected trust.
Correct. Because of ERISA rules.
Correct. Yep. It's under the ERISA rules and it's in a protected trust. That is a good point. But if it's not, if you're just somebody who doesn't have that, you're not running from the creditors or not picking up the phone because of that, then certainly it's something to look at, because what happens for most people is they just wind up with all of these old accounts. Like I said, it's very difficult to try to stay on top of going back to the rebalancing like we talk about, and where's the risk and how are they all aligned together? And a lot of times what we find is they're all going in separate directions. So you're all over the place because you're not really handling all of the asset allocation in all of those different accounts.
Right.
So blunder number 3 is not maximizing the employer match, right? So if you are in a plan and your employer has a matching program, this is free money. I mean, I can't say that anymore. Like you can read my quote, right? Free money is the best kind of money. That's a quote to me. Like you can use that anytime. I'm telling you, free money. So what happens a lot is people sign up, and let's say the employer is doing, a basics, it's 25% of the first 6. So you're going to get 1.5, but in order to get the 1.5, you got to put in 6. If you don't put in 6, you're not getting the 1.5. You're getting 25% of 1, right? Every time, and it's up to 6. That's not a robust match, but it's still free money. And so what you need to do is work out, how can I get that? Because that's an automatic increase. You automatically just made 25% on your money just by getting the match.
Actually made more than that because you're getting a little help from the government too. Right?
Well, no,
Because
you're
the money
gonna pay
comes out
taxes.
pre-tax.
You're gonna pay taxes eventually, too.
Well, right now though, you're getting it pre-tax.
Right. Yes, but if you do it out, as Craig is alluding to, if you do it out for what it costs you out of pocket, out of wallet, out of to pay out of hand for the benefit that you're getting after tax, net after taxes, it's huge, right? It becomes a much larger number in terms of dealing with everything. Absolutely. And so it's one of the things to be looking at, because sometimes we do the I'm signing up just to sign up, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But then I'm not going back and looking at it and thinking, oh, am I increasing? Am I taking advantage of this? Am I doing more? And so that's one of the things to be looking at, is to say, hey, what's there?
Mhm.
Blunder number 2 is taking a loan. Here's the thing with taking a loan. If you take a loan from your 401k account, you have to pay it back. If it's for anything except for a first-time home buyer, it's a 5-year payback window. The reasons that taking a loan is bad business, mainly, is because if you separate from your employer, that loan is automatically due. And it's due within 90 days. Technically, it's 60, but they give you a free 30-day window, so it's technically due in 90 days. And if you aren't able to repay it in the 90 days, it becomes a taxable event. And now you've got full taxes on whatever the outstanding loan amount is, plus the 10% penalty. Not a good thing. But second, and more importantly, is by taking the money out of your account, you're taking it out of the market. As Craig said, it's no longer working for you, right? And all you've got to do is miss 1 or 2 of the best days of the year by having the money taken out in a loan to have your performance suffer tremendously. What do we say, Craig? What is that? 4 days, the 4 best days of 1 year, and you drop the performance from like 10% to like 3.9.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crazy number when you look at it, but that's what happens. That's the reality of this. And now I understand if it's a need, if it's, my home is going to get taken, is going to get foreclosed on, or, there's medical expenses, or it's an absolute, I've got to have this money. Well, yes, that's why it's there. It should be the second emergency to the emergency fund to take out of your retirement account. It should not be for a vacation. It should not be to buy a boat. It should not be to do, fund discretionary expenses just because I have it there and I can take a loan and I'm paying myself back because it's no longer working for you.
Well, I will tell you though, on one front though, Tom, as opposed to taking out a pre-retirement withdrawal, it is a better option than that. So doing a hardship withdrawal or some other withdrawal before 59 and a half.
Okay, so one thing with that, and just to back you up with it, one, there's a step process to that. You cannot take a hardship withdrawal unless you've taken a loan.
Right. So you have to do that first.
You have to do the loan first because they know the loan is a better tactic than taking the hardship withdrawal. And Craig is mentioning hardship withdrawals. Hardship withdrawals come into play for somebody who absolutely needs to get it. But what happens there is you're taking the money out. You're taking the money out. You're not paying the penalty, but you are paying the ordinary income tax. but you're also getting put into what I call the penalty box. Because for 6 months, you can't participate in the plan anymore.
Yeah.
So now with that hardship withdrawal, not only did I take money out that I'm not repaying because I can't put it back in, so it's definitely not working for me, but now I can't contribute for 6 months.
Right.
All around bad thing, that's somebody who's gone to then that's really in a desperate situation. Because you've gone past the loan at that point. You had to take the loan. It's the first criteria to qualify for the hardship distribution.
Right.
Blunder number one is not signing up, right? Because what is the one thing you can never get back?
A train?
You're not trained.
Oh, okay. Time maybe then?
Time.
Okay.
Jeez. Time. You cannot get back time. So even if it's that I'm only signing up to get 1%, I'm going to put it in the target date fund because I don't know anything, but I'm at least going to participate. Time is more important than anything because compounding of interest only works out over time. It doesn't work in small increments. It works when we're talking about 20, 30 years. That's when compounding really kicks in and really works. So that's the savings train. This is our analogy to it because what we hear a lot is, I just graduated. I've got student debt. I'm going to wait till I get my debt paid off. Then I'm going to participate. Or we're going to get married, so we're going to save for a down payment on the home, and then we're going to get into the plan. Well, now we had a baby, we got to start putting away for the education fund, so we're going to get that squared away, then we're going to do. Next thing you know, you're 45 or 50 years old, and you haven't even started in the plan yet. So time is of the essence. You need to get in. The mind the gap thing, because it's sort of trying to do the whole train analogy there with it, but I love the mind the gap if you've ever been on the tube in London. But the mind the gap in this scenario is Social Security is only going to give you a base amount, right? What you need to live on is the higher amount. The gap in between whatever Social Security is going to give you and what you need to live on, that's the gap. That's what you've got to fund. It's sort of like looking at what a reliance rate, like what's your reliance rate? What do you got to be able to fund there? And do you have the monies? Do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the funding capability to fill the gap in? Because that's what it all falls on the shoulders of the employees today. Pensions don't really exist that much anymore.
Now, can you do a little bit of catch up if you are that 45, 50-year-old person who just started looking at it? Because I had all these other things.
At 50, you do have the catch-up provisions that do kick into play. So you turn 50 in a 401k this year, you are able to contribute an additional $6,500. So the max contribution is $19,500 in 2021. The catch-up provision is 65. You have to be turning 50 in this calendar year or already over age 50, in which case you can add the additional 6,500 for a total of 26,000. We're talking about traditional IRAs. Traditional IRAs at 6,000, you get a $1,000 catch up for 7,000. We're talking in 401ks this year, it's 26,000 if you are turning 50 in this calendar year.
So if now you're a little more stable, kids are out of the house, got, not paying for college anymore. Now you can start putting some money away, right?
And that would be the hope. Yeah. So I just realized, and now I lost it. I had a bonus and now I lost it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
have something to do with the tube?
No. I should have jumped in when I had the bonus in my head because there was another one that I was just thinking of to say, wait, there's another one that goes along with this that I didn't put in here that I should have put in here. And I'm not.
Other than the catch-up contribution?
No. It was before this. It was something else in terms of dealing with it that I realized there was one more that was sort of a bonus to it. I think it had to do with the loans or with the nope. See, that's what happens. I start drinking and that's it. It just goes right out of me and I just completely forgot about it. But I had another one that I was going to add in as a bonus to that to say, this is another one that when dealing with the 401ks that you really need to be thinking about, but it's gone. So
Well, all the more reason to come back to our next series of
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
401ks
No,
and
it'll be I'll be in the middle of a football game and it'll clear in my head and I'll be like, oh crap, I remember what that is now. Instead of just going through, oh, that's the way it goes, right? So for us, the vision here is trying to help everybody sort of get a handle on this. And we've talked about some of these blunders and some of the things that go on. But what I say to everybody is that you've got the ability, we're happy to try to help. Sometimes that's what it is. See, now I remember. Bonus, there we go. See,
All right, speak before you forget it again.
The bonus is beneficiaries. Not checking and updating your beneficiaries on an ongoing basis.
So let's blunder 7.
It's the bonus blunder. Let's put
bonus blunders.
Yeah, bonus blunder. Because here's what happens if you don't do that and you pass away. A lot of times we sign up when we're younger. Maybe we're not married. Maybe we don't have kids. So we're naming somebody, mom or brother or somebody as the beneficiary, and then we forget and we don't go back and look at it. We don't change it. And Craig and I have had this happen to us with clients, where suddenly that account now is going to somebody that was never intended to go to once the individual got older, got married, had children, but never changed it. Or in a worst case scenario, named a beneficiary who predeceased them and then never came back to it. And the problem there is it goes to your estate and the estate gets left holding it. And there's a whole tax issue complication, depending on who the custodian is, who's handling it, how bad it can get. But a lot of times they're going to try to tell you, you've got to take an immediate distribution of those assets. And that's tax on whatever it's grown to at that point. And if we're dealing with an older individual, you could talk several $100,000 sitting in that account that is now taxable.
Well, anytime you have to get your money through going to court, you're going to have less money at the end because you're either going to be paying attorney fees, court costs, taxes, just the cost of waiting to get the money, just aggravation. It's always cost you more if it has to go through the court system.
Right. So anyway, for any of these, we're happy to try to help. We're happy to go through it, do a review, take a look at your allocation, crash test it, sort of figure out with you, what the allocation strategy is, what you're trying to do. That's why we're here. As Craig and I say to everybody, it's you got to have a plan. Right? Because you got to have a plan, you got to have a goal. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to get? What are you trying to make in this? In the case of when we talk about retirement, what are you trying to mine the gap? Where's your gap and how are you filling that in? So if you need a little help, you can always just drop yes into the chat box. We're happy to reach out. You can always reach out to us. We'll give your contact information in a second. This is Craig and I in our more formal attire. In fact, we just did one of these, not just recently with the Mass Office of Economic Empowerment, where we had the jerseys on because we were doing one of our workshops that ties into our wearing the football jerseys. That's all on a game plan regarding, and we do it around football. So the evaluation forms, we do these, like I said, for a lot of different organizations. We work with a lot of retirement plan participants. We talk to people all the time. So I always like to get feedback from everybody. So the link is in the chat box, Craig. Hopefully you've got that and you can drop that in.
I don't know if I have that actually. No, I don't have it. I'm sorry.
That's all right. We'll send it out. No worries. And so what's on tap? So next week, we're going to do financial wellness, which is sort of the conversation that we sort of started this with, which is about that taking the emotion out of your money, having those conversations, understanding the type of money personality you are and how that affects your handling and dealing with your finances. On the 11th, we're going to do all about life insurance because, COVID and the pandemic and everything taught us anything is that the vast majority of Americans are underinsured and don't have enough life insurance. And then on the 18th, right in time for the holidays, let's do something fun and happy, estate plan for long-term care, because much as a similar conversation, the statistics just say 7 out of 10 people who are turning age 65 are going to have some sort of care need in their later years. All right, questions. Craig, any questions in the chat box?
I have no questions at this time, sir.
Okay, so if you ever do need us or want to reach us, just reach out. You can go to the website, it's www.ariesfoundation.org. There's a contact us form right on there. You can shoot us an email. It's info@ariesfoundation.org. Or you can check out the blog post, which we do on a regular basis. I didn't get to it this week, so apologies for anybody who might have looked for it. But it's ariesfoundation.org/blog. So if there are no questions, Greg,
Nope.
I am going to say thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful evening. I'm going to stop the share.